Okay, so let us begin. The series of classes is called Before There Was a King. The next book of the Tanakh is the book of Shmuel, which of course deals with kingship. And the book of Shoftim is the book which precedes Shmuel, and that's the book which deals with various leaders, not kings. They tend to be, for the most part, local leaders from a particular tribe. So we started this already. We're more than halfway through. So I think the focus will be on four things. Before there was a king, we will deal with the last two judges, main judges of the book of Shoftim, Yiftach and Shimshon. Then there's the sort of a coda or appendix to the book that deals with the theme of not having a king, the negativity of not having a king. And that's what we will look at another book, which is preceding Kingship, which is Megillat Ruth. Book of Ruth those are the four texts that we'll be looking at, and they all are, in a sense, leading up to Kingship. The book of Judges, I would say, is for the most part, a description of what happens when you don't have a king, which is big problems. And the book of Ruth is more about the positive side of kingship, what qualities perhaps a king should have, or the kind of people who have these qualities who are appropriate for leadership and for kingship. That's the idea. Whether we'll complete this in this set of classes, I don't know. If we don't, we'll complete it in the beginning of the next semester, and then we will proceed with something else. But I did want to finish this. I did want to mention also that I will be teaching on Wednesday mornings. If anybody who's free, I know those people interested, over at KJ, 10 o'clock, we'll be studying the book of Yirmiyahu, something I never taught in my life, and spent a fair amount of time now, and I find it extremely interesting. It's very different, and that will be a challenge for me. Hopefully it works out well. So that's what I'll be doing for the most part, and other things as well. That's the main thing. In any event, yes?
Do you have any assumption
when Shoftim was written? It's very hard to know. I'm not sure all of Shoftim is written. I mean, the sources of Shoftim, some appear to be earlier than others. I have no idea when it's actually written. The truth of the matter is that the Gemara discusses in Bava Batra, assigns authorship to various books, and it's quite clear that they have to be taken with many grains of salt. That, for example, they have Shmuel writing the book of Shmuel. The problem is he dies before half the book is over. And so there's also other evidence that it's much later. So the answer is I don't know. People have written about it. I personally don't know. I wouldn't even venture a guess. But the way it's set up in the Bible, in any event, it's set up as preceding kingship. It's set up as I believe, a critique of what happens when you don't have a king. The book of Shmuel is maybe a critique of what happens when you do have a king. So this is a critique of what happens when you don't have a king. So we're up to the Yiftach. Now the story of Yiftach actually begins in chapter 10. In this translation, page 541. And we start with chapter 10, verse number 6. We have a theme that appears throughout the book. That is, Vayosifu b'nei Yisrael la'asot hara b'nei Hashem. That the people of Israel continued, once again, to do evil in the eyes of God. Evil in the eyes of God, in the book of Shoftim, typically means worship of other gods. So here there's a list of other gods that Israel worships. In verse number 6 on page 541, chapter 10. Vayavdu et habalim, Ashtarot, Elohei Aram, Elohei Sidon, Elohei Moab, Elohei Bnei Ammon, Elohei Plishtim. There's a whole list. So they worship all these various gods. Vayazvu et Hashem v'lo avaduhu. And they abandoned God and did not serve God. You would think that since they're serving 8 different gods, why not throw in Hashem as a 9th? But apparently, that's not what's happening. They're abandoning God, or maybe by virtue of the others, by definition, you have abandoned God. Vayim Kareim, Vayicharaf Hashem, God gets angry. Vayim Kareim, V'yad Plishtim, U'v'yad B'nei Amos. So God is angry. This is the typical, we've seen this throughout the book. They sin, God gets angry, God hands them over to some foreign enemy. In this case, 2 nations in particular are mentioned, Plishtim and Ammon. And then the description of the travail and the difficulties. Vayiratzu, vayirotzutzu et bnei Israel. They shattered, they oppressed or battered and shattered. Vashanahi, Shmonas, that's Reshana. At Kol bnei Israel, Asher b'yever hayarden, b'yeretz ha'amori Asher b'gilad. So for 18 years, we are told, they are oppressing Israel. Vayiratzu, vayirotzutzu. And in particular, it mentions the land of Gilad. That's very important in the story. Gilad is the land on the other side of the Jordan, that in the Chumash, the two tribes of Reuben and Gad request that they not be forced to cross over, and they be given territory on the other side of the Jordan. Moshe gets angry at them. There's a negotiation. And finally, they work something out. And that part of the land, the other side of the Jordan, not the initial promised land, is possessed by Reuben and Gad, and Moshe adds half a tribe of Menashe. In the Chumash, Menashe did not ask to be put there, but Moshe places half of Menashe on the other side of the Jordan. So Gilad, as far as we know of it, is basically possessed by Menashe. Now, the other side of the Jordan, and this is very important, the other side of the Jordan was land that belongs to Ammon and Moab, let's say. And we know in the Chumash that Israel was enjoined from attacking Ammon and Moab. Not allowed to attack them. And there are two different versions, and not allowed to attack Edom either, because those lands belong to those nations. We can't take their land. There are two different versions of what exactly happened. One is the version in the book of Bamidbar, and the second is a version in the book of Devarim, and they're not exactly the same. It's similar, but different. We'll get back to that later. That's central to the story of Yiftach. Actually has many interesting implications even for today. That territory that you occupy, you took from X, we took it from Y, which is history of humanity, basically. One nation conquering the next. In any event, but the people that live in this land, which was formerly the Amori, because the king Sichon, the king of the Amori, he defeated, in the Chumash, he defeats Moab. He takes their land. Then Israel has a war with Sichon. Israel takes the land from Sichon. So Israel didn't take the land from Moab. It took it from part of Moab, which is Sichon. And that Sichon is a Canaanite king. Amori is one of the Canaanite nations. So Israel is in a funny situation. They have defeated and possessed land of the Canaanites, but not land in the land of Canaan. But Sichon captured land on the other side of the Jordan is the natural boundary. So they possess Canaanite land, which is not the land of Canaan. Therein lies the whole issue in the book of Bamidbar. What do you do with Canaanite land, which is not in Canaan? Is it part of the land of Canaan? Is it not part of the land of Canaan? We'll get to this later on because it's relevant, but for now, this is the background to the story. So, Vayavru b'nei Ammon. Now, in verse number 9, Vayavru b'nei Ammon et hayarden. V'hilachem gam b'Yehuda u'b'Binyamin u'b'Beit Ephraim. V'teitza u'Yisrael ma'od. So in verse 9, even though we're told earlier that the Philistines and the Ammon nation are the enemy, but in verse number 9, the nation of Ammon is singled out. And the nation of Ammon crosses over into the land of Canaan, crosses over, and they attack other tribes, not just Gilad. They attack Yehuda, Binyamin, and Ephraim. Okay. Vatesa, and Israel was very vexed, great distress. Now we continue. Vayizaku b'nei Israel el Hashem lemar. Now Israel cried out to God. This is part of the pattern that we see in this book. Sin, hand over to the enemy. Israel cries out to God. You've seen this before. And they said to God, Chatanu, we have sinned, confession. Ki azavnu et Eloheinu, v'navod et habalim. We have sinned, we abandoned you, we worshiped other gods. So they're asking for help, essentially. And there's a confession. This is the theme that runs through the book. Now we have God's response, which is different from other responses. Vayomer Hashem el bnei Yisrael. God is presented in very human terms over here. Like enough is enough. You know what I mean? Vayomer Hashem el bnei Yisrael. Alomi Mitzrayim, Umin Amori, Umin Bnei Ammon, Umin Plishtim, V'Tzidonim, V'Amalek, U'Ma'on, V'Chatzu Etchem. God mentions how many nations? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nations. 7 different nations have oppressed you. The 7th of which we don't know what it is, called Ma'on. Don't know what Ma'on is, actually. But it is curious that Ma'on is the same letters as the word Ammon, which further reinforces that at the core of the story is Ammon. They're the main enemy here. All these nations oppressed you. V'atitzaku elai, v'yoshia etchem miyadam. When you cried out to me, I saved you. This is the pattern. V'atem azavtem oti, but then you abandoned me. V'atavdu elohim achirim. L'chein lo osif lo shia etchem. So God says, enough. Keep on the same business. I'm not going to save you anymore. L'chu v'zaku el elohim asher b'chaytem bam. Why do you call out? Why do you pray to the other gods that you worship? Maybe they can help you out. But as far as I'm concerned, I've had enough. We've been through this pattern several times already. But Israel said to God, no, we have sinned. Chatanu. On page 542, end of chapter 10, Shoftim. So they say, Chatanu, we sinned. Asay atol lanu k'cho atol. Do whatever you want to us. Achatzilenu no hayom hazeh. But please, save us today. Save us today. Do whatever you want. Save us today. Vayosiru et Elohei hanechar mikirbam, vayavdu et Hashem. And they remove the foreign gods and they serve God. And we have the interesting expression, Vatiksar nafsho ba'amal Yisrael. God could not bear the misery. Presents God in very human terms. God is suffering. Israel is distressed. God suffers with Israel. God sees the travail of Israel, and God is suffering with Israel. Now, it doesn't say that God said, okay, I'll send you somebody. But from the continuation of the story, it sounds like God agrees. God sort of gives in and agrees to one more time, at least. Save us this one time. So, fine. And now we have the story. So this is the background, yeah?
Is it common for in the Tanakh? I'm trying to think of where else the Tanakh mentions nefesh Elohim. Because here it says "Tiktzar nafsho." Usually, as you said, nefesh is not a God word.
That's true.
It's
very unusual. The whole thing's unusual, right?
So is there off the top? We can do it another time. That just have we seen nefesh Elohim as something that was a full?
I don't. Off the top of my head, I can't think of another case.
That's interesting.
You have to check it out.
Yeah.
Whole thing. You're right. It's a very good point. Nefesh Elohim is unusual, and the description of God's suffering. We do have verses such as God being upset or God being sad and that we do have. We have God regretted. I mean, the Bible is replete with statements about God's feelings. Maybe replete is too strong a term, but it's not that unusual. The Rambam tried to write that all away, that God has no emotions and all that. But the Chumash doesn't read that way. The Chumash reads God as being sometimes very human and presented as such. So it's a good point about Nefesh. Now, in the continuation, the Ammonites, they cried out. Cry out, here the translation is mustered. Sometimes you cry out, it's like to mobilize. So Israel is crying out to God, and the Bnei Ammon are crying out to muster their army. And they encamp in Gilad. And Israel masses and gathers in Mitzpah. So we have the two armies here. One is in Mitzpah, which is a lookout place, and a line of demarcation. We have Mitzpah in the Chumash, actually. We have actually Mitzpah and Gilad appear in the same text in the Chumash. Anybody remember where that is? We have Mitzpah and Gilad in the same place, actually. I'll tell you where it is. Look at chapter 31. Chapter 31. That is correct. Lavan and Yaakov. Let's find the verses. Yeah, right. So it's on page 66. It's when Lavan and Yaakov part ways. So Lavan chases after Yaakov, and they make a deal, as it were. And first it says they gather stones together, and they put the stones together. And Lavan calls this place Yigarsa Aduta, Yaakov Karlo Galei, Gimel Lamed Ayin Dalet. So Galei, Gilad, similar. And in the continuation, Lavan says to Yaakov, Hamitzpah Asher Amar, Yitzef Hashem Beini Ubeinecha, Ki Nisater Ish Mereyehu. And the mitzvah was so fast as a lookout, a scout. So this place, it's a dividing line. Laban says to Yaakov, you're going your way, I go my way. Separate. But God will, Laban says, God will look and see if you misbehave. Laban is always very concerned about the next guy's misbehavior. His own misbehavior doesn't seem to be relevant in any case. In any event, here you have the mitzvah and the gilad. What?
Laban is still stuck without his idols. He never found them.
That's right. Well, he probably has other idols. Don't worry about it. He's got plenty of idols.
That part of the story.
Didn't have those particular idols. That's true. In any event, here we have the two armies encamped. Reminds us that the text recalls these two sides, Lavan and Yaakov representing the Arameans on one side, and here is Ammon and Israel. Now the princes, the leaders of Gilad, said to each other, the person that will be the first to fight Ammon, whoever volunteers and steps forward to fight Ammon, he will be the one who will be the Rosh. He'll be the leader. That's the assumption. The one who fights Ammon for 18 years of under the control of Ammon, and Ammon has gathered their army now, and that the two sides are ready to fight, but there's no leadership. Who is the person? Whoever it is will be the head. And this leads us to our story of Yiftach. Yes?
It's just the normal way things were done. First to get the army together, and then say, now who will be our leader?
That's a good question, right? That's a good question. Well, I guess when an army is on the other side, you have to try to do something to counter it. But they don't have a leader, and they're looking for somebody who will step forward. And this, now we begin our story in chapter 11. Actually, we'll finish it this week, next week. This week and next week, we'll deal with Yiftach. V'yiftach ha'giladi ha'yagi barchayo. V'hu ben isha zonah. V'yoled Gilad et Yiftach. So it's very interesting. We are introduced to this person named Yiftach, who was called in the very beginning, Yiftach ha'giladi. Yiftach, the Giladite, Yiftach ha'giladi. And in fact, he was the son of a prostitute, but the father is named Gilad. So he's from Gilad, the place, but Vayoled Gilad at Yiftach, it sounds like his actual name of his parent, his father, that is Gilad. So he's a Giladite through and through, both in terms of his name, his family, and his place. Vateled Eshet Gilad lo banim, but Gilad's wife bore him other children. Vayigdalu b'nei ha'isha, and when the children grew up from the other wife, at the prostitute, Vayigarshu et Yiftach, Vayomru lo tincha b'veit avinu, ki ben isha acheret ata. So when they grew up, they threw Yiftach out of the house. They said, you can't inherit with us because you're from another woman. You're not really part of the family, even though they have the same father. So Yiftach is banished from his home. He's kicked out of his place. Vayivrach Yiftach b'bnei Echav. So Yiftach runs away. Vayeshev b'eretz Tov. And he lives in a land called Tov. Good life. So he seems to be doing okay for himself. He lives in Eretz Tov. Whatever Eretz Tov is, suggests something positive. Vayitlaktu el Yiftach anoshim reikim. And unto Yiftach gathered empty people. Anoshim reikim, that's a negative. Vayetzu imo, and they went out with him, probably means went out as a warrior. Maybe they're brigands, gedudim, and those kind of things. We're told he's a gibor chayil. So he's a great warrior who has been banished from Gilad, from his own home, and his father is Gilad, banished by his own brethren. He's thrown out. Okay, we've seen this before. And however, he lives in Eretz Tov. And now the elders of Gilad are searching for someone to lead them. So they're going to approach Yiftach to lead them. Okay. Now, Vayihi miyamim, vayilachamu b'nei Ammonim Yisrael, and it came to pass later, when the Ammon went to war against Israel, Vayihi kashem nuchamu b'nei Ammonim Yisrael, and it came to pass, when they did fight, Vayelchu ziknei Gilad, v'kachet et Yiftach be'eretz tov. So now that there's a war, the princes, the elders of Gilad, go to take Yiftach from the land of Tov. Vayamru Yiftach, l'chav vayito lanu l'katzin. They said to Yiftach, come, you will be for us a katzin. Now a katzin, it's an interesting word. What is the meaning of katzin? A katzin is, in the Bible, typically some kind of a leader. You have a Yeshayahu, katzin tiyalanu, kitzinim. Perhaps it's associated, I think, perhaps in modern Hebrew, it's an army person is a katzin. So maybe even in the Tanakh, there's a sense of a military leader. You will be the commander-in-chief of the army or something like that. Come with us. You'll be the katzin. And we will fight against Ammon. Yiftach was Ignei Gilad. He's not a fool. Alo atem sleitem oti. Behold, he says, you hate me, and you have thrown me out. You threw me out. Umadua batem elayata kashem tzar lachem. Now that you're in trouble, you come to me. What? It's not to me a rhetorical question.
Wasn't it just the family going out?
Yeah, but
Why
Well,
is it out the elders?
Right, the family threw him out. Well, let's put it this way.
We just did the same thing with God.
What?
We just did the same thing with God.
With
Hashem. With
Sam
God.
says it's
exactly. Well said. That's right. He's actually mirroring what God says. How can exactly? Excellent point. It's very, and it reinforces Yiftach's argument. There's something to it. You know what I mean? You abandon me. Now it's true that the elders didn't necessarily throw him out. They also didn't prevent him from being thrown out. He is a Gilad. The man's name is Yiftach the Giladite. Yiftach a Giladi, who's not in Gilad. And he's living in a good place, apparently. Eretz Tov. And now they want him back. And Yiftach says, how come you're coming to me now when you're in trouble? All this time, I'm banished from my own place. No one stepped forward to bring me back. And suddenly, Sam says very well, it's exactly what God says. Why do you come to me when you're in trouble? Well, suddenly you remember me. Right. Vayamru ziknei Gilad el Yiftach. Lachein, atoshavnu elecha. V'alachta imanu v'nilchamta b'vnei Ammon. Vayitu lanu l'rosh l'chol yoshvei Gilad. So they say, we've come to you to make a proposition. And the proposition is that if you fight, you will be the head. So something actually interesting here, that when they first go to Yiftach, they said, Vayita lanu l'katzin. Now, initially it says, in back at the end of chapter 10, whoever will defeat Ammon, yiyeh l'rosh l'chol yoshvei Gilad. And it strikes me that there is a difference between a rosh and a katzin. A katzin, I think, is a more narrow, perhaps it's more military. A rosh is the leader. So they were willing initially to whoever fights to appoint that person as the head. When they approach Yiftach, they say, be a katzin. Yiftach says, I'm not interested. Okay, here's the deal. If you come, you'll be the rosh. So Yiftach accepts this. Is the opportunity to be the leader. And he says, Vayoma Yiftach el ziknei Gilad, im mishivim atem oti lilachem b'vnei Ammon, if in fact you appoint me over you to fight against Ammon, and I succeed. If I fail, I don't want anything. But if I succeed, then I agree, I will accept it on condition that I'm the leader, the rosh, the head. And the elders of Gilad said, may God hear between us, or witness between us, if as you imlokit varcha kein naseh, in other words, to take it before God, it's sort of like an oath. That God is a witness. In other words, that means it's binding on us. And in fact, in verse number 11, Vayelech yiftach im ziknei Gilad, Vayasimu am oto alehem l'rosh u'katzin. So he becomes both. He's both the leader in general, and he's also the general. He's also the katzin.
The implication being Rosh, which I continue to be the Rosh even after we defeat him.
Right, exactly. That's true. That's true.
Katzin, well, I'm your boss when we're fighting battles. It's
Right.
military.
Even if he's a military, he retains the title afterwards. But basically, the Rosh is a broader. You're right. The Rosh is a much broader definition and more significant.
Like president versus general.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he became the president and the commander.
Now he's both.
Yeah.
Now he's the Rosh and the
He
Katzin.
embodies both.
Vayidaber Yiftach and called Dvarav Lefnei Hashem, and Yiftach spoke all the words before God. We had this in the Chumash, by the way, the same kind of negotiation, and it's very interesting. We have exactly the same thing in the Chumash, where someone comes with a proposition, and the other side's not crazy about it, and they negotiate it, and at the end, it is brought before God, and this decision, the mutual commitments are made before God, and that's the story that is relevant to us. That's the story of Reuben and Gad at the end of Sefer Bamidbar. It's exactly what happens with Reuben and Gad. They go to Moshe. We don't want to cross over. We have cattle. This is good for cattle. Says Moshe, that's not acceptable. Why should you not fight? And you're going to dissuade the others. No, we will fight. We want to come afterwards. And Moshe calls everybody together, and they make the agreement before God. So what Yiftach is doing over here, he speaks his words before God, because that's binding. It has the status, I would say, of an oath. And that's actually interesting in the story because of what happens later. Because later, Yiftach will take a vow, as we know, that whoever greets him after the victory, he'll bring as a sacrifice to God, and his only child, his daughter, comes to greet him. That's the end of the story. It's a sad story, but we have to keep this in mind. Yes, Wendy.
I was thinking of the end of the story, that by his accepting the leadership of the people, it condemned his daughter because he couldn't have any progeny, because he was an outsider who couldn't inherit. His family shouldn't inherit the Jewish people, that they should head them forever.
Right. I mean,
he's got to be eliminated from the possible kingship.
It's not right. Well, I don't think we're talking about kingship at this point, but we are certainly talking about a leadership, and we'll get to the kingship issue. The story of the daughter is, as you say, he has no successor. Not going to have any successor, but we'll get to that later on. And now we have Yiftach. So Yiftach is in charge of this. He wants to prevent a war with Ammon. So now he's going to send a message to the king of Ammon. And it's very striking here because it's a long message that he sends. And I will say that it's very statesmanlike over here. He actually goes through he recalls the story of Israel in traveling through the desert. And he gives his version of what took place. And a lot of the language of Yiftach in this chapter is really virtually identical to the language of the Chumash in the book of Bamidbar. So let's see what Yiftach says over here.
Which together with the point we were just making before about God and Reuben, I mean, I assume that modern scholarship is jumping all over that in terms of unity of authorship.
I don't understand.
Well, here we have a book later in Tanakh in which the mindset of the writer seems to be parallel, if not identical, with the mindset of the writer of Bamidbar.
Right.
So I would assume modern scholarship is making much of this in terms of the unity of the authorship of that part of Tanakh and that part of Chumash.
Could be, or it could simply be playing off it. The fact of the matter is, as I mentioned before, that the story of Israel traveling in the desert, encountering Ammon and Moab and Edom, there are some interesting distinctions between the story in Bamidbar and the story in Devarim. There's actually some blatant contradictions there, but the main story takes place in Bamidbar, and yes, the story that Balak's Yiftach story is much in line with the story that the Chumash says in the book of Bamidbar from Israel's standpoint. So let's take a look at this. Now we're up to chapter 11, verse 12. Vayishlach Yiftach malachim el melech b'nei Amon le'mar. Ma'aliv alach ki bata elai li'ilachem b'yarzi. So Yiftach sends messengers to the king of Ammon. What is there between us? He says, why are you coming to fight me? What is this war about? So the Yiftach's first move is to try to prevent war. He doesn't simply go to war. He he makes an attempt to prevent war through negotiation or through argument. He's going to make his case now. Right, it's my land. Vayom melech b'nei Amon el malachei Yiftach ki lakach Yisrael et artzi ba'aloto miMitzrayim me'arnon ad hayabok ad hayarden v'ata hashiva eten b'shalom. You have my land, not your land. Artzi, exactly. And I want you to return my land. Now let's, for a moment, just think about this from the standpoint of the king of Ammon. First of all, let me just say straight out, and the text here deals with this, that in the Chumash, in the story in the Chumash, it doesn't mention Ammon at all. It only mentions Moab. Here, Yiftach will admit, that the land that was taken was not just the land of Moab, but also the land of Ammon. But in the Chumash, not a word about Ammon, actually only Moab. And the protagonist in the Chumash, who tries to block Israel from entering the land, is Balak, the king of Moab. And actually his allies in the story are not Ammon at all, but they're Midian. So the Midianites in the beginning of the story are allies of Moab. And Ammon is curiously not mentioned at all, whereas over here it's Ammon. But we have to remember, Ammon and Moab are brothers. And they seem to be linked together in many ways. And over here, the text links them together. So what's at the core, what's at the heart of the story here, as I mentioned at the outset, is a very interesting situation. You have country A and country B. Country B is Moab. Israel is not allowed to take land from Moab. Country A is Sichon, the king of Canaan. Israel is permitted to fight Canaan. So we to take the land on the other side of the Jordan. Canaan defeats Moab and takes the land of Moab. And then Israel takes the land from Canaan. So now the question is, who is justified in keeping the land? Do you say, well, the land actually didn't belong to Canaan in the first place, so Israel is simply occupying someone else's land? Or do you say, no, and once the Amori took the land from Moab, it became their land. And now when Israel takes the land from Amori, it's now Israel's land. So here we have a difference of opinion.
I would say asking Urim.
Well, you might say that, but I don't think that the Moabites and the Ammonites are asking Urim and Tumim. They have a simple way to look at it. It's our land. Get off our land. In the Chumash, from Balak's perspective, Israel is already occupying Moabite land, and Balak's afraid they may try to occupy more Moabite land. From Israel's perspective, I think from the Torah's perspective in that story, the fact of the matter is, we fought against the Amori, we defeated the Amori, it's our land. In point of fact, in human history, there's no doubt that human history is all about A, taking land from B, from time immemorial. So so the question is, how do you sort this out? How far back in history do you go? These are all very relevant questions. But in the story over here, we have a disagreement between, in this case, Ammon, in the Chumash it's Moab, and Israel. So the king of Ammon says, listen, there's no need for a war. Just give us back our land and we'll live in peace. So, yes.
It's this part because it really is a killer. It's in the Urim. V'yomer Hashem Elai al totzares Moab v'al tizkor bo milchama ki lo etein l'chom ha'artzo Yerusha ki l'vnei Lot v'satius or Yerusha.
Right. That is the pasuk in Devarim, and there are other interesting differences between the two stories. But the phrase al totzares Moab is right here because it appears over here. V'teitel Yisrael Moab, exactly playing the same language. there's no doubt that the book of Shoftim is playing with the text of Bamidbar and probably also with the text of Dvarim. So absolutely. And that's what Yiftach's going to say. On the contrary, we avoided going to war with you altogether. But this land, this disputed land, is not your land. That's what Yiftach will say.
The way the pasuk there reads, it's almost deliberately ambiguous. You can't take their land. And the pasuk isn't distinguishing between who is the intermediary owner.
Right, but in the case over there, this is before the battle with Sichon. In other words, the book of Devarim actually, more than the book of Midbar, the book of Devarim is making a different point, which is the same way God gave you your land, God gave Ammon and Moab and Edom their land. And the Chumash, if you remember, we studied Devarim, elicits a piece of evidence to support this. And the evidence is very interesting. The evidence is, because if I hadn't given Ammon their land, they could never have gotten their land in the first place, because because the giants are there. The giants were there, the Chori, the Zuzim, the Amim, etc., and no human beings could displace them if not through God's assistance. So the fact that Edom has their land, where the Chori were, and Ammon has, and Moab has, can mean only one thing, that I gave them their land the same way in the book of Devarim. The Chumash makes the point that Og, Melech HaBashan, is a giant. The Chumash does not mention this in Sefer Bamidbar, by the way. But in Sefer Devarim, when it talks about Israel possessing the land, Kirak Og, Melech HaBashan, Nishar Meyeter HaRephaim. So the same way you defeated the Rephaim, that means God gave it to you. The same way I gave Ammon and Moab and Edom their land. That's Sefer Devarim. That's actually different in Bamidbar. The Chumash never says that explicitly. You're not allowed to start up with them, but it makes a different point in Devarim. They're just like you. They have their land. You have your land. Don't take their land, and they won't take your land. That's Sefer Devarim. But the language about Totzah is actually very interesting because it plays out here. In any event, as we continue, Yiftach now responds to the king of Ammon. By Yosef od Yiftach, by Yishlach Malachim and Melech Bnei Ammon. He sends messengers to the king of Ammon. Remember that in Bamidbar, we also have messengers which are sent. Moshe sends messages to Edom. Yishlach Moshe Malachim. Messages are sent to Sichon. So here the book of Shoftim is following that same spirit. So Yiftach is sending his messengers. By Yomelo, Torah Yiftach. Now we have a long, very statesman-like response. So says Yiftach, Lo lakach Yisrael et Eretz Moab, et Eretz Bnei Ammon. We never took the land of Moab or Ammon. See, here he adds Ammon, and the Chumash never mentions Ammon. We never took your land. No, never happened. Ki ba'alotami B'tzrayim. When we came up from Egypt. Vayelech Yisrael b'midbar ad Yam Suf vayavo Kadesha. Now he recounts the history of the journey in the desert. We crossed the Sea of Reeds, Yam Suf, we came to Kadesh. Vayishlach Yisrael malachim. And Israel sent messengers. And Melech Edom Lemar. It's exactly what it says in the Chumash. We send messages to the king of Edom, saying, Ebronah bi'atzecha. Please let us pass through your land. V'lo shama Melech Edom. But the king of Edom refused Shama to accept it. He refused to accept this idea. And the king of Moab also refused to let us pass through.
Here also, he's taking the version in Devarim. The version in Bamidbar is that the Edomites approached with an army.
That's right. The version in Devarim is different. Actually, in Devarim, it says they actually gave them food.
Yes, yes.
In Bamidbar, exactly. So, yeah, that is true. Here it doesn't mention the war. It says we asked permission, and it doesn't mention the fact that they left because there was an army. That's a very good point. It says they said no. Vayeshev Yisrael, so okay. You say no, you don't grant permission, we're not going to walk through your land. The Herb says a good thing. And at least as far as Edom is concerned, in Bamidbar, Edom came out with an army. That's not mentioned over here. Devarim doesn't mention the army. So Yiftach's point is, listen, we asked permission. They said no, we didn't fight. We actually went around. We circumvented them. Vayelech b'midbar, vayosav et Eretz Moab, Eretz Moab. We went around them. We didn't go through. We didn't start a war. They said, no, fine. You have every right to reject us. We went around. Vayavo mizrach shemesh li'eretz Moab, vayachanu b'yever Arnon, v'lo bo b'gvul Moab, ki Arnon gvul Moab. On the contrary, we circumvented, we went around, we started no war. And now he says, what happened next was, Vayishlach Yisrael malachim el Sichon melech Amori melech Heshbon. Now Israel sent messengers to Sichon. Vayomer lo Yisrael nabra na b'yartzecha ad mekomi. And Israel said to Sichon, nabra na, nabra, let us pass please through your land. Actually, if you look in Bamidbar, you will see, I think that the word na is not mentioned. I think it's the Rabbi Artzecha. There it's Israel that sends messengers, and there it's not so much, please let us, we will pass through. So there's more of a threat over there. But again, we're going to pass through, we're not going to start war, we'll pass right through, etc. And then Sichon, of course, refuses. Sichon refused to let Israel pass through. And on the contrary, Vayesov Sichon et Kol Amo, Vayachanu b'yotza, Vayilachem in Yisrael, as it says in Bamidbar, and Sichon massed their army and fought. Vayitein Hashem Elohei Yisrael et Sichon v'et Kol Amo b'yad Yisrael, Vayakum, Vayiresh Yisrael et Kol Eretz Amori Yoshev Aretz Ahi, Vayishu et Kol Gvul Amori me'Arnon v'yad Yabok min Hamidbar ad Hayadem. So Israel defeated Sichon, and they possessed their land. The significance of the battle of Sichon cannot be underestimated. Actually, it was a previous battle, but the battle of Sichon is the first actually possession of Canaanite land. That's why it's of supreme significance. And we remember in our study of the book of Yoshua that Rahab, one of the things she remembers and everybody's talking about, we talk about two things. One is crossing the sea, and the other is the war against Sichon. So the war of Sichon is of enormous significance, and Yiftach's point is they attacked us with defensive war. We took their land. We purposely avoided your land, and the land that we took is not Moabite land, because that was the land of Sichon. Yes, Sichon had defeated the Moabite first kings of Moab. That's true, but we didn't take anything from Moab. Yes, back there. Go ahead.
Oh, the term Lohim means it's unusual. It's
Right.
Kind of an unusual.
Yes, it is. Good point. Yes. So I guess it means he didn't believe. He just
Yeah,
permit.
He wouldn't.
He didn't trust them basically. He
You
didn't.
know that we wouldn't take over them.
Right. He didn't trust the. I mean, the fact of the matter is, from an objective standpoint, it's hard to blame him. But some nations that want to just pass through your land and walk through the land on the. We understand why Sichon might not agree to do this. That's true.
And wasn't it our intention actually to take it over?
No, the intention was not to do that. The intention was to pass through that. The stated intention, and I don't think we have reason to doubt it, was to simply to pass through to the other side, to get more quickly to the land. When Sichon masses his army, though, unlike Edom, we don't avoid it. With Edom, they massed the army and we went away. Well, the Sichon, when they massed the army, we didn't go away. We fought them.
But the
Yes.
Amori is part of Canaan, isn't it?
Amori is Canaan.
It's not
It's
part of
Canaanite. That's what I said before. Amori, the land of the Amori, is part of the land of Canaan. That's on the other side of the Jordan.
Yeah.
But Sichon captured land on the other side, on the side of the Jordan, on the eastern side of the Jordan. That was not part of the promised land. But after Israel takes that land, so the question is, what is the status of the land? It's not on the other side of the Jordan, but it is land that belongs to the Canaanites. Therein lies the crux of the matter in the book of Bamidbar. Yeah.
I don't have time to tease it out in my head right now, but I can't help wondering whether, in fact, Moshe Rabbeinu's interesting way of expressing it, we will pass through, as opposed to request, and then it being rejected, actually ends up being a way of ascertaining whether it's in line with the divine will or not to take this Moabite land, which is under the control of the Amorites. At some point, we get a divine voice saying, do make war against them.
Right. By the way, the messengers that are sent to Sichon in the book of Bamidbar were not sent by Moshe. It's by Yishlach Yisrael Malachim. Moshe doesn't send those messengers. God says to Moshe afterwards, don't be afraid, you'll defeat them. But the impetus, I see, that's what I was suggesting before in a subtle way, that actually Israel is sort of looking for a fight. Moshe maybe has one thing, but Israel is getting very impatient. We're not impatient. What are we circling around? So they send a message to Sichon, which is, I would say, not Ebron, no, but Ebra. We're passing through. We're not going to make trouble, but it's almost an invitation, to, they're not avoiding the fight. With Edom, we have to avoid fighting Edom. It's our brother, etc. And with Sichon, it's a different story. In any event, this is the history told by Yiftach, and it corresponds, for the most part, to both the version in Bamidbar and in Devarim, with some minor distinctions. Yeah.
But in the criticism earlier that God had of the Jewish people,
Yes.
he didn't criticize them being into these other lands, correct?
No, the criticism in this story has to do with why do you come to me when you need me and you're in trouble, when you're not in trouble, you abandon me completely, which is what Yiftach says, basically. That was a very important point. That's what Yiftach says. So Yiftach's statement to the people is sort of God's statement to Israel. The parallel statements over here, and which suggests that Yiftach has a point, and that Israel, the whole way the story is set up, is a critique of Israel. And now Yiftach continues with his summary in verse 23. It's a long letter. V'ata Hashem Elohei Yisrael Horisha Te'emori B'nei Amo Yisrael. Look, says Yiftach, the God of Israel disinherited the Amorites in order to give to God's people to Israel. V'atati Roshenu, and you should inherit it. And then Yiftach continues. Hello, Et Asher Yorishcha Kamosh Elohecha Oto Tirash. The land that Kamosh being the god of Moab, and by implication Ammon, whatever Kamosh gives you, you can inherit. V'et Ko Asher Horish Hashem Eloheinu Mipanenu Oto Tirash. That sounds fair. Whatever your God gives you. Now, what's interesting is two things. First of all, that actually in the Chumash mentions Kamosh. Kamosh is the god of Moab. And the Chumash mentions it in that story in the following way. The Chumash itself is aware of the problem. The Chumash itself is aware of the fact that one could say that the land is Moabite land. So the Chumash has the songwriters, song singers, saying the following, the Moshelim. Bo Cheshbon, Tiboneh v'tikonen, come to Cheshbon, come to the city of Sichon, right? And then they continue the song. Oy lecha Moab, avadata am Kamosh. Woe unto you, Moab. Woe unto you, the people of Kamosh, the god of Kamosh. Notan banav pleitim ubenotav bashvit. L'melech emori Sichon. Kamosh has given his sons and his daughters to the king of the Amori. Now that verse is very, very important for us. And let us find that verse in the Chumash. It's in Bamidbar. Was it chapter 20, 21 it should be? Let's find that verse. In chapter 21, it is chapter 21. Yes, there it is. Page 334, verse number 29. So this is the songwriters, right? The bards would recite. Come to Cheshbon. Firmly built, well-founded is Sichon city. Fire went forth from Cheshbon, flame from Sichon city, consuming Ar of Moab, the Bamot of Arnon. Woe to you, Moab! You are undone, O people of Kamosh. His sons are rendered fugitive, and his daughters captive by an Amorite king, Sichon. Now here there's something very interesting about this verse that's quite relevant to us. Two things. First of all, the songwriters sing about Kamosh giving their sons and daughters to Amori. Now here there's a point that's relevant to us, which is the following. Moab, Ammon and Moab are brothers, both born to the daughters of Lot. Lot is the father. It's a story in Genesis. And different nations are known for different things. So Moab in the Bible, among other things, is a very famous story of Moab. And the king of Moab is named Mesha Melech Moab. Mesha Melech Moab, in the book of Kings, king of Moab, is a war against Israel. And in the war, Moab is losing the war. And Mesha actually takes his son and brings him as a sacrifice, which creates a tremendous stir, and Israel withdraws. So what Moab is known for, actually, in the Bible, is child sacrifice, and that's well known, but I add to it the following, that actually in the Chumash, there's an allusion to it. Because in the song, Oy lecha Moab, Avarta, woe to you, Moab, you people of Chemosh, Natan banav pleitim ubnotav bashvit, lemelech emori sichon. The songwriters are making fun of Chemosh. Chemosh is the god of Moab. So the god of Moab is the god that accepts human sacrifice. But in this particular case, the god of Moab has decided to give the sons and the daughters of Moab, not to himself, as his own, accepting the sacrifice, but rather has handed over the sons and the daughters, lemelech emori sichon, to the foreign king, to the king of Sichon. Now, the reason I mention this over here, and the significance of it, is the following. Because Moab, and by implication Ammon, because in the story over here, Ammon is linked to Moab. In the Chumash, it doesn't mention Ammon at all. But the land, apparently, that was taken from Moab, some of that land, apparently, belongs to Ammon. And what Moab is known for is human sacrifice. Now, of course, we're going to get to the story of Yiftach's daughter, and Yiftach's daughter is all about human sacrifice. There's no question. It is true that there exists within our tradition a very apologetic strain which claims that Yiftach did not actually sacrifice his daughter, but obviously anybody who reads the story without presuppositions understands very well that Yiftach does sacrifice his daughter. That's obvious. He did to his daughter. That's actually very interesting. We'll get to this. And it strikes us that Yiftach, who fights against Moab, but at the end of the story, he actually does what the Moabites are known for, which is human sacrifice. We'll get to that later. That's number one. And point number two, I will make the following observation. Maybe there's not much to this observation, I don't know. But it strikes me very curious the way Yiftach says, listen, what our God gives us, that's ours. And what your God gives you is yours. That's very modern, you know what I mean? That's very open-minded of him. But I don't think that the Chumash would necessarily, you know what I mean? We're hard-pressed to find another Israelite leader, you know what I mean? I can't see Moshe Rabbeinu saying this. It is true. It's that, right, that is true. It is true that in the book of Devarim, it is true. As the book of Devarim, in talking about the singularity of Israel, says, listen, other nations have their gods, but as far as you're concerned, you have only one God. Einod milvado. That is true. But the context over there, I think, is different. Because the context is not this liberal sense of you do your thing, I do my thing. The point of the Chumash is not to necessarily say that all things are equal. The point of the Chumash is the opposite. Whatever they do, we don't care about them. But Tamim Tiyam Hashem Elokecha Shecholak. It is true. I totally agree with that. That in the book of Devarim, and on more than one occasion, several occasions, we have that sense that the other nations have their gods. But as far as you are concerned, the Shecholak, that is true. And there are other places as well. But here I still find it striking that Yiftach says, listen, whatever Chemosh gives you, that's fine. Our God is different. There's something about that, I know, I feel is problematic, especially given what happens at the end of the story. Yes, my friend.
But there is the context. I mean, the context in which it's been said is not a general thing to the world, to Jews, anything like that. He's saying, he's talking to the king.
Right.
So he's saying, he's trying to appeal to him. And, whether I believe it or not is another matter. But listen, not only that,
Right.
he's really knocking that God. He didn't get very far in that. He gave it to him. He gave it to you. He really gave it to you. He's
Right. No, I understand. And that's what I'm saying. You can read it that way. It's just to appease. Listen, if you conquer lands in the who knows where, it's going to be yours. But meanwhile, our God gave us this land. I do it within the broader story of what happens at the end of the story with the sacrifice of his daughter, it strikes me that one can read, at least in retrospect, into this verse, there's something about Yiftach which is problematic from that standpoint. Yes?
Is it deliberately ironic that the Vayishlach Yisrael Malachim L'Melech Edom, and we've got in Vayeshev, in Parshat Vayeshev, Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim L'Fanav El Esav Achiv Artzah Seir.
Parshas Vayishlach.
I said, oh, I'm right.
Yeah.
Vayishlach, he says Artzah Seir Edom. So,
Right.
Isn't it? I mean, it's a deliberate. Well, I would imagine it is. It's a deliberate. When you say the echoes from the Chumash, I mean, here is Israel sending the messages lefayes in order to appease an approaching army, because Esav is marching against Yaakov. So Yaakov, he isn't Israel yet. So Yaakov, who's not Israel yet, or is he? You know, he's become Israel the night before. He sends messengers to a marching army of Esav in Eretz Edom. So here we've got sending Israel. It says Vayishlach Yisrael Malachim from Melech Edom. It's almost a redo, and I'm wondering if that's deliberate.
The story of Israel, the story in Bamidbar of Israel sends several messengers in the book of Bamidbar, and Baal sends messengers. There's a theme of sending messengers. It is certainly true that in the book of Bamidbar, that sending messengers to the king of Edom plays off Yaakov sending messengers to Esav in many, many ways. That's actually very central to the book, that's for sure. And it's also true that the sending of messengers here is another way to direct us, I think, to the story in the book of Bamidbar. I mean, to the credit of Yiftach, he's trying to avoid a war. He's trying to avoid a war. Says, listen, let's talk it through. You have no case. So why don't you just, instead of making the threat, just accept the right, do the right thing, and let's not have a war. To his credit, he's very statesmanlike over here. And that's his first argument. His first argument is that the land that is being disputed is not your land. You say Artzi, but it's not your land. It's a land that belonged to Sichon. We took it from Sichon. Has nothing to do with you. That's his ancient history. But de facto, it's not yours. That's the first claim. Now he has two more claims, which are very interesting. And now the second claim is, V'ata hatov tov ata mi Balak ben Sipor melech Moav, harov ravim Yisrael im nuchom nukam bam. The second argument is, are you better than Balak? Did Balak go to war against Israel? It is true that he tried to appeal to a higher power with the cursing and all that business, but there's no evidence that Balak himself went to war against Israel. And Balak apparently is singled out as the great king. So in other words, your great king many years ago did not go to war. Now, you could make the argument he didn't go to war because he thought he could do it a different way. He might not win the war. But Yiftach's argument is, de facto, there was no war. When this thing happened, Moab didn't fight it. So if Moab didn't fight it, obviously on some level, they accept the reality. So why are you better than Balak? That's the second argument. And now there's a third argument. B'shevet Yisrael b'cheshbon u'bivnoteha u'v'yar'ar u'bivnoteha u'v'chol ha'orim asher al-yidei arnon shalosh me'ot shana. Says we have, for the last 300 years, he says, Israel has lived in these places for 300 years. Umadua lo yisaltem ba'etahi. How come for the last 300 years nobody said anything? These arguments I think are very current, you know what I mean? They're very relevant arguments, and it's very unclear actually. But this is the argument. The argument is three arguments. First of all, it's not yours. Second of all, de facto, when it happened, there was no complaint. There was no attempt to retrieve it by force. And finally, it's a kind of chazaka. You've been there for 300 years. So all this time, nobody did anything about it. And after a certain amount of time, the past doesn't matter anymore. At a certain amount of time, there's a time limit. There's what's it called again? Statute of limitations. 300 years is a long time, and therefore these are 3 different reasons you have no case. So instead of threatening us, take care of your land. You have your land, or whatever Kamosh gives you. Our God gave us this, and this is Shalom Yisrael. That's the argument of Yiftach. This is the Haftorah, by the way, of that parsha. So it's not that, it's Haftorah. Parsha Chukas is Haftorah. Yes. So let's see what this is. All the what let's check on the time here. 10:30. Good. 25 minutes. Okay. V'lo shama melech b'nei Amon el divrei Yiftach asher shalach elav. So one short verse. The king of Ammon was not convinced with all the arguments. It's my land. I want it back. Give it to us, or else. That's the argument. Okay. V'atia Yiftach ruach Hashem. What?
It doesn't say how that was communicated.
No, it doesn't say. It says, right. We know that there are messages going back and forth. Vatia Yiftach Ruach Hashem. So, yeah, upon Yiftach came the Spirit of God. Now, Ruach Hashem appears in the book of Shoftim more than once. It's the way he is somehow inspired to fight. And that's a phrase that appears in the book of Shoftim, which does suggest to us that God is in fact responding to Israel's request. Because it wasn't clear in the beginning. God said, listen, there's no way. Why do you come to me when you're in trouble? Please, 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 please. And God is suffering with Israel. And now we have Yiftach's very statesman-like speech, and it's rebuffed by Atiyah, and the Spirit of God came over Yiftach.
Against Ammon, it also is exactly the language of Saul.
It is the language with Saul. That's true. Yes, it is. And other people as well. That's
Also
true.
against Ammon.
And it's with Ammon as well. Very good. It's true. Maybe I'll come back to that point later, this week or next week. Vayavorit Hagilad v'yet Menashe. Vayavorit Mitzpeh Gilad. Mitzpeh Gilad avar b'nei Ammon. So he crosses from the Mitzpeh to Gilad, and now he's in the territory of Ammon with his army, and he's going to fight them. And before he fights, Vayidar Yiftach neder l'Hashem. Vayomar. Yiftach takes a vow, a neder. Vayomer. And he said the following: Im naton titain et b'nei Ammon biyodi. If you will, in fact, give me victory, hand the enemy over to me. The one who will come out to greet me from my house, to greet me, Bishuvi b'shalom ibnei Ammon, when I come back in peace. Vayol Hashem v'avitiu Allah. That will be given to God, and I will bring that up as a sacrifice. By the way, the neder over here, the vow. So in the Bible, vows are conditional statements, every one of them. And in fact, this particular vow, the language of it is very reminiscent of 2 vows. One is Jacob's vow. When Jacob was running away from home, and he goes to sleep, and he has the dream of the staircase to heaven or whatever. And then Jacob took a vow. Vayidar Yaakov neder, right? If you take care of me, if you feed me, Vishavti b'shalom el beit avi, and you bring me back in peace to my father's house. Exactly what Yiftach said. Vishuvi b'shalom. Then Jacob said that this pillar which I set up shall become the house of God. Right? I will bring a sacrifice to God. So Jacob makes a similar vow. If you bring me back in peace, right? And right? It shall be the house of God. So it starts with a pillar, and he promises to build the house of God. And presumably the house of God would entail sacrifice of some sort. And in fact, when Jacob does return, he does bring a sacrifice. So it's very similar in that sense. The difference, of course, is what is the sacrifice? So the question, yes, what do you want to say?
So it's clear it have to be a human being. I mean,
Yes,
who
it is.
walks out of house? You don't keep animals in general in your house, so it have to be. So
We
his
don't.
intentions sound.
Well, even if you would keep the animal, it's true. When I had a dog for a while, and I came in, the dog would greet me. Dogs are very loyal. But the point is that I agree with you completely. It doesn't sound like he's talking about an animal. It's not Elsie the cow coming to greet him. It's a person who will come to greet me after the victory. It certainly sounds like a person. Now, the question is, what person is he referring to? So he doesn't know who's going to greet him. Maybe he's hoping it's his next door neighbor who doesn't like, you know what I mean? Who knows? But the fact of the matter is, it certainly sounds like a human being, which conforms with what we said earlier about human sacrifice. Yiftach is thinking in terms of humans, doesn't know who's going to come, but he's offering the sacrifice to God, and it sounds like the sacrifice will be a human sacrifice. Maybe one of what?
Maybe he wants it to be one of his half brothers.
That's right, exactly. There are endless possibilities here, but I don't think it doesn't sound like an animal. It sounds like a person, right? Now I'll bring it as a sacrifice. Fine.
Why is there a need for a vow? I mean, why is that?
That's a great.
Why is there a need for a vow? There is I wouldn't say a need for a vow. A vow essentially is a commitment to God. You have it, by the way, in the Chumash. It's very interesting. In the very same chapter as Sichon, but earlier, chapter 21 in Bamidbar, in the beginning of the chapter, the story is that Israel was traveling in the desert, and the Canaanite king of Arad fought against Israel and took captives. And there you have Vayida Yisrael Neder, chapter 21 of Bamidbar, verse 1, verse 2, and Israel took a vow. Im naton titein et ha'am hazeh biyadi, v'charamti et areihem. If you will give me victory, I will dedicate the cities to you. Cherem is also a kind of sacrifice. Yes?
I've always believed that we don't have the rest of that sentence. But look at it. Vayida Yisrael Nedel Hashem Vayomar, Im noson titein es ha'am hazeh biyadi, v'charamti et areihem. Then something else is going to
I
take
think
place.
so.
You have the same
Right.
issue with Yaakov.
But it's
where does the neder begin and end?
But here it's
That's
really
true.
specific. The punchline is missing here. And I think that punchline was something awful which is redacted or changed.
Well, let's agree to disagree about that. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I think that's not correct. I'll tell you why. Because chapter 21, you can read it your way, by the way, but I don't think it's right. I'll tell you why not. Because chapter 21 of Bamidbar is parallel to chapter 14 of Bamidbar. In chapter 14 of Bamidbar, which is the story of the Mapilim, look at the end of chapter 14. There it says, Moshe says, don't go and fight. I'm not going to be with you. And the ark did not go with them, and Moshe didn't go with them. And it says the Canaan and the Amaleki came and defeated them, and they called the place Charma. So the first story of Charma, the place is called Charma. That's where Israel fights when they shouldn't fight. And the effect of that actually is Charma, which is destruction. They destroy us. Now, in the second story, which is very interesting, there Moshe is not involved at all. It's Vayida Yisrael Neder. And the second story, which is actually the second generation, they don't actually need Moshe. Nor does it appear they need God to go with them through the ark. There's no mention of the ark. The purpose of the vow actually is a way to bring God on your side by making a commitment. And here, Vacharamti et areihem is exactly the opposite of what happens in 14. So I don't agree with what you said before, as clever as it is, by the way, but I don't think it's right. And the Charma here, and it's very significant because it says something about the second generation. The second generation, which is a plus and a minus, but the second generation doesn't believe that to win the war, you need the ark or you need Moshe. We have a way to have God on our side without these objects which represent God. We can do it through the vow. So the vow basically, in Chana also you have a vow. Chana takes a vow. A vow is a commitment. When Chana prays, prayer is about commitments, actually. I mentioned several times in my class, one time Rory Madeline from BJ was at Drisha talk about song, prayer and song. It's very interesting. So I asked him a question. I knew what he was going to say, but he had a very nice formulation of it. I said, are you saying prayer and song are the same thing? He said, no. I love song, but song is not prayer. Prayer is commitments, and commitments are with words, not with songs. And that's very important. That's Chana's prayer is a neder. It's with great prayers, by Tidor neder. So That's the neder. The neder is a commitment. And people are saying here, Yiftach is saying, if you help us, then we will commit to you through sacrifice. And that's true of Yaakov, and it's true of Hannah, and it's true of Israel in chapter 21, and it's true of Yiftach. The problem is that Yiftach, the commitment is very noble, but human sacrifice, and that's what it sounds like, is something that the Chumash has rejected over and over again. And not only that, it's exactly the quality of the people that Yiftach's fighting. And that's get back to, I want to amplify that point. That's a very important point. In any event,
The word Vahoya is an instrumental. That's the end of the and we don't have the Vahoya.
in which case?
In Bamidbar, we
You're
don't
back
have
to that again. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Yes.
Jacob says Vahoya.
Speak, I can't hear what? Yes.
First off, and the other coach, she gives it on first.
Right. She's going to dedicate her child to God. If you give me a child, I will dedicate the child to God.
Here he's fighting for Israel, and he's doing himself. It's a different, it's very well.
Right. He is.
It's like he is doing it, it's not the people. It's like.
True. On the other hand, he's both the leader of the army and the leader of the people. So presumably you could say that he sees himself as representative of the people, which is very problematic. I mean, it's very problematic. Okay, let's yes, what do you want to say? Quickly.
Second generation, first generation,
Yes.
object versus just prayer. That's exactly speak to the rock, don't hit the rock. And that's why Moshe loses leadership, because in the second generation, he's not supposed to use the rod, he's just supposed to speak.
Could be so. Could be so.
That's
If that's the shot there. Could be so. So Rashi says it. Could be so. In that case, let's continue that. Fine. So now we have the following. Right? You have the same language. In the tone titane to amazeh biyadi. It's exactly the same language. Vayakem yaroer ad boach hamigid esrimir adovel kramim makal gadol ha'maod. So Yiftach is successful. Yiftach is victorious. The Spirit of God has come over him, and now we have this is the positive side of Yiftach, and now we have the remainder of the Yiftach story, which is negative from two perspectives. So we'll start it now. So what happens is Vayavo Yiftach hamitzvah el beito, v'nei bito yotzeit likrato, v'tupim uvimchovot. So Yiftach comes home, and behold, his daughter comes to greet him with dancing, timbrel and dance. The idea of, we've seen this elsewhere in the Bible, you have it with David and David defeats Goliath. The women come to dance actually before Saul. Saul has slain his Miriam at the sea. It's typical, like it's an expression of joy at the victory that God has brought about, etc. So his daughter comes out to greet him. Raki Yechida. It's his only child. There's no other children, and this is his only child, his daughter. When he saw her, so he tears his clothing, son, in the morning. Vayomer ahabiti, woe, my daughter. Hachreya hichratani biatoyit biochrai. Oh, my daughter, you have brought me low. You have become my troubler, Ochrai. It's a play on Ocher and Korah. It's the same letters. Kofresh Ayin, Achreya Hichratani, Biato Yit Biochrai, Bianochi Potziki Piel Hashem, Lo Uchal Vashuv. I have committed myself, I opened my mouth up, he says. I have proclaimed something to God, I can't retract it. So the assumption of Yiftach, which is the assumption of the Bible, I would add, is that if somebody takes a vow, you can't actually get out of the vow. The Bible does not know about what we call hatarat nedarim. It does know about a woman who takes a vow or an oath and is in the control of her husband or her father, whatever, and he can, if he hears it and says no, it doesn't take effect. But outside of that, we don't have any case, any explicit rule, that is to say, if you take a vow, that you can not keep the vow. Now, in this particular case, it's hard to believe that such a vow should be kept. Now, we have a parallel story, of course, in the Bible, which is a little different, And the parallel story, of course, is Saul. Saul took a vow. Saul said, whoever has eaten of the spoils, eaten during the day of wars, Saul imposes an oath on the people that nobody's supposed to eat. That's in chapter 13 of Shmuel Aleph. And Jonathan doesn't know about it. Jonathan has no idea. And Jonathan is busy fighting, and Saul's busy standing around doing nothing. Jonathan does a little fighting. And Jonathan goes into the forest of honey. He takes his staff and he dips it into the honey. Maybe it's dates or whatever it is. Maybe it's honey, who knows. And he tastes it. And somebody sees him and says, don't you know your father imposed an oath on everybody? And nobody should eat? And it's interesting, what does Jonathan say? You see the text connects the two stories. Remember the language? Who knows? What does Jonathan say when he hears this? He says he's a fool, but how does he say it? What's the language? Ochar avi et haaretz. Ochar avi, it's exactly the same language. It says, look, he says, look how my eyes are shining. Ta'orna. Aru is to curse, right? Well, L'ha'ir is to, says, look how bright my eyes are because I ate. Then he says, if the army had eaten, would have been a greater victory. I mean, the oath is a foolish oath in the sense, you tell your army not to eat during war. The army lives on its belly to me. What do you mean you don't eat? That's crazy stuff. Okay. Point is, so but when Saul finds out through the lottery that Jonathan ate, he says, what can I do? Mot yumat Yonatan. Jonathan shall die. He violated the oath. And what happens? The people refuse. The people said, how could he die? He brought about the victory. He's the one responsible for the victory. By Yiftua Amit Yonatan V'Lomet, and the people redeemed Jonathan. He did not die. There we have an example, actually, of somebody stepping in and saying, common sense here, this crazy kind of stuff. And there it's also a parent and a child. So there the people stepped in. Here, nobody steps in. Nobody steps in either because they don't think you can step in, they don't care. The rabbinic tradition actually faults the leadership here. The text says nothing about the leadership, but the text seems to say that the given assumption of the story is that there's nothing you can do. That's what it sounds like. What?
She has no name.
No, give the story, right? But she says, we'll get to it. Yes, Seb, what?
Isn't there a mechanism for handling a neder if you can't uphold it if it's not a valid?
There's a rabbinic mechanism.
No, but there's a mechanism in Tanakh.
No, quite the opposite. The Mishnah says, "Hetin nedarim porchin ba'avir." The mechanism, we call hatarat nedarim, floats in the air and has no basis.
But Jonathan had a mechanism.
The prime example, I've spoken about this many times. Yeah, the people just say, forget about it. The people stepped in over there.
That was the technique.
But the technique is they held the gun to Saul's head. They say, you're not doing it. That's the technique. The classic example of a rabbinic rule which overturns the Bible is Hatarat Nedarim. Spoke about that many times. That's how we start Yom Kippur. That's how Yom Kippur begins, by saying we can overturn God's word. We can overturn God's decision. And the best example is people, the idea of Torah Shema Peh, basically, of an interpretive tradition. My point is that, it's not my point. My point in the story over here, for whatever reason, nobody steps in. And not just that, his own daughter says, what can you do? Nothing you can do. But look at the next verse. Avi, Patsito et picha el Hashem. You opened your mouth. Aseli kasher yotzami picha. Do what you said. That's the verse in the Torah. Kachol hayotzei mi piv yaseh. It's the Chumash says it. So it sounds like the Bible doesn't know from. That's what it sounds like. The Bible doesn't know from any normal mechanism. Now you could say normal mechanism you don't have, but maybe there's an abnormal mechanism. Maybe someone says, we're not doing it, as the people said in the case of Saul, because it makes no sense. Why would you come? Someone's celebrating the victory. Why would you, someone is overjoyed about God's victory, and that's the person you're going to bring as a sacrifice. Okay, But in de facto in the story, she seems to accept it, he accepts it, and nobody says differently. Yes, my
But
friend.
it seems to me it's a contradiction of two laws. I mean, you have a law, you can't bring human sacrifice, and the nether, so wouldn't one negate the other?
You would think so.
I mean, the question is which is the strong,
Right, so
primary.
it sounds like primary
It
is,
doesn't make sense.
well, sounds like that,
Why would
What?
it be required?
it sounds like the Yiftach's understanding, let's put it this way, okay? Yiftach's understanding is that there's no way out of it. It's true that the story of Akedat Yitzchak is God saying, or the angel saying to Abraham, you passed the test. That was just a test, you passed the test. But in that case, actually, there's a substitution. It's an act of substitution. It's a different sacrifice. A sacrifice must be brought, but not Isaac himself, but his proxy. I mean, here's the point. We could discuss this forever, but in the story, as we have it in front of us, plain reading of it is, Yiftach says, I can do nothing about it, and his daughter says, you can do nothing about it. Do what you said you're going to do. You made this commitment, you got to do it. That's what she says. But yeah.
It's always bothered me, but I believe it's the case, so I was reading in the Talmud that if you make a neder not to eat matzah on Pesach,
Right.
that override,
Oh,
you
that's
don't
what
eat.
they-
But it's
So
true,
I'm
but that's true.
I think Yiftach is giving us he's teaching us Torah here, that unless you have a Torah, these things are, it seems to, I mean, it's very crazy, but it seems to override positive commandments. You should not, if you eat matzah on Pesach, and yet if you say a neder that you're not going to eat, you have to say it the right way, whatever. If you say you're not going to eat matzah or any bread or any leavened or unleavened thing, you don't eat it. You don't eat it, so it overrides positive commandments.
But this is a negative commandment. You're not allowed to.
Even more, even stronger. I'm saying it that positive, negative, doesn't matter. It overrides.
No, it does matter. It does matter. To not do a positive commandment, okay, fine. You don't get the check mark thing. But to murder?
I wouldn't call it murder. You're calling it murder. It's not murder. Akedas Yitzchak, by the way, the Torah never called it murder. The Torah calls it sacrifice.
To me, it does feel
I mean, it may feel that way to you, but the Chumash doesn't
So
present.
dead is dead, you know?
But I
Dead
mean,
is dead.
Tell
It's not
it,
murder.
tell
But
it,
this,
tell Isaac
what
and
is
tell
God
it to keep
commanding
story.
Abraham to commit an act? That can't be murder because
Not murder.
unlike Nixon and unlike Trump, when God says that it is the law,
Right. The Chumash, by the way, the Chumash never suggests, ever. It never raises this question. The commentaries raise the question. The Chumash, in my view, never actually suggests that God has no right to do this or God is wrong in doing it. The Chumash suggests that God is
but that's like
finding a way out of it, basically. God is saying it was a test. But the idea that this would be an act of murder from the Torah standpoint, I don't think that's true. God has every right to reclaim the human being, especially in the case of Isaac, whose own birth is miraculous beyond belief. God might say he's the father of Isaac, actually, in the story. Because Sarah can't in any natural way have a child. So the point is that, yes, it's true that in our tradition, what we take from God saying, or the angel saying, don't do it, is that God has rejected this idea, and that appears in many places in the Bible, including Jeremiah. I never dreamt of this, in fact. The Christians took it a different way. That's the Akedah for them. God sacrificing his son, right? That's the Christian, even carrying the wood there. The point is, the Jewish tradition goes a different path. But I don't believe in the Chumash. The Chumash never raises that as a moral problem. That's my point. The commentaries are bothered by it. They're bothered by it.
but
I don't think the Chumash is actually bothered
but
by it.
that's something that God was asking for. This is not a case where God asked.
No, it's not. By
There's a marvelous loophole
What?
here
Yeah.
in the thou shalt not murder. If God redeems me and we are victorious, I will come when I come back, I will kill my arch enemy.
No, I understand. Look, we understand that the story is very problematic. No, the story is problematic. My point is, and we have another parallel case where, in fact, the child is saved. And my point is, what's interesting to me is twofold. First of all, Yiftach doesn't see this as a problem. he wished it was somebody else. But human sacrifice per se is not his problem. And that B, his own daughter says, okay, what can we do about it? You opened your mouth, you dope, but the fact is, this is what you said, and there's no way out of it. There's no suggestion in this story that there's a way out of it. The suggestion there's a way out of it is coming from another story. Why didn't people step in? It makes no sense and all that. But in the story over here, I don't see any suggestion that there's a way out on the part of any of the characters. Nobody, not the daughter, not the Yiftach, not the women who bewail Yiftach's daughter. I think it's a tragedy, and the man said a very stupid thing and a very problematic thing. But at the end of the day, it sounds like once you make this commitment, the understanding of the people in the story, and once you make this commitment, there's no way to get out of the commitment. Yeah. And take 2 more comments. What time is it now? It's 11. Okay, 2 more minutes. Go ahead.
Just on the same track that you're saying about the theology of Tanakh, in the story that you were alluding to before about Nation Melech Moab.
Yes.
The way the text describes what ensues after his sacrifice of his son, it doesn't at all look like the commission, like the Tanakh is weighing in against the sacrifice.
Right, it's very hard to know,
He
right?
accomplishes, and he is allowed to accomplish exactly what he said he ought to accomplish through the sacrifice.
That is
of
true.
his son.
That is very true. That's an interesting story. We have to look at it more carefully, but you're right. Yeah, what else back there?
There's a 2-month delay. Do you think it was there for a reason to try to see if there's a consciousness?
I don't know. We didn't get to it yet, but maybe we'll pick it up next time. It's a good question. Okay, last comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds to me like it was kind of accepted because.
Does sound that way. It sounds like at that time it's accepted. He's the leader. He represents the people. His own daughter says, do it.
You know,
And yeah,
it was accepted because we learned at the beginning of the story that they accepted all the gods and all the mishigas of all the other
True.
gods. So actually,
Right.
why are we knocking ourselves out other than our modern moral sensibilities? We've been told at the beginning of this class and at the beginning of the story, they took on all the gods and all the ways and all the nonsense of the gods of Ammon, Moab, this, that, and the other thing. And now look what happens at the end of the story. He does what Ammon and Moab do,
Right.
and nobody says peep. Why are we surprised?
I'm not saying we are surprised. Let me
I
guess.
mean, I'm asking rhetorically.
I know. Last word. Go ahead.
In our seats than the people who surrounded Yiftach. How do we interpret Yiftach?
I think we interpreted exactly that's the point they're making, that even a flawed person, it's like Ewa told us Noach, the leader of the generation, it's accepted by that, has as much standing for that generation, even if it's a weak generation, as the greater leaders of the past. I will say that the rabbinic tradition, obviously, there's the second Nedarim, the whole Masechtas actually, and which deal with this idea that you can undo these commitments. There's a way out of them, and that the human being has the ability to get out of it. And as I said, we start Yom Kippur with Ataras Nedarim in this life. We start Yom Kippur with the statement that our fate is in our own hands. God may have decreed something, but it doesn't mean you can't overturn God's decree. It's theoretically possible to overturn God's decree. And the best example of that, or the parallel, will be Kolidre, Hatarat Nedarim, which begins Yom Kippur. And the statement essentially is, we the people have the ability to overturn the vow or the oath or whatever. It's in our hands, and therefore it's our responsibility as well. So we'll continue. Next week, the class meets at 10. Then we change the clock next week. We'll finish up Yiftach next week. We'll discuss more about Yiftach's daughter, and then the next chapter. And then the following week, we'll start with Shimshon. Okay?